night like tonight reminds me of when I was growing up in Colorado, and we lived just south of Denver on the Front Range and the foothills. And in Colorado, you can see a really long ways, especially along the Front Range there in the foothills. And from our house, we could see all the way down. We live in a little town called Parker, and we could see all the way down to the skyline of Denver, which was about 40 miles away. And we used to go out this time of year when the clouds would build up and just sit on our back porch and watch funnel clouds form. And it's not quite as scary as in Arkansas because, you know, the trees and stuff around here kind of block your view. But there, you could see, at least where we were, you could see forever. And I remember one evening sitting out there watching, and we saw 3 tornadoes on the ground at one time all across the Denver area. Now there, the tornadoes aren't quite as big as they can get around this area, but still an amazing sight, kind of a scary sight, and pretty powerful. Several years back, when we were living in Kansas, we were about an hour away from Joplin. And after the tornado went through, some of us went over to help do some cleanup around the church building over there. And after that, you know, I grew up watching them and enjoying seeing the funnel clouds form. But then I really got a respect, I guess, for the power of the storms, power of tornadoes. When you go through town and just a huge swath is flattened. And it didn't hit the church building directly, but it was close enough that there was a roof that had collapsed and caved in a part of a wall in their library, and then the neighborhood around needed some help and some work. It's pretty amazing to me, and we enjoy still watching them, and we don't enjoy the danger of it or the fear of it, but we enjoy in our family storms. And I especially enjoy it because it reminds me, and I hope it reminds you, of the power of God. In Psalm 18, David says at the beginning of this psalm that he's, you know how some of the psalms have little introductions where David describes what the song is about and who it's for and all that. And he says, "To the choir master, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord on the day when the Lord rescued him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul." Now, we don't know exactly what David meant, what event took place. Maybe when he was finally crowned king. Maybe the day Saul died, although David was pretty upset that day, so I don't know that he'd be rejoicing in victory on that day. Some other events in David's life could have fit this description. But David had been through a lot. His life had been in danger for a very long time, chased by Saul and his men, just on the verge of death. And then even later in his life, chased down by his own son, who tried to take the throne from him. So David went through all that. And when he was secure again, he wrote this psalm. And he writes starting in verse 7, "Then the earth reeled and rocked, the foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him. Thick clouds dark with water. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. And he sent out his arrows and scattered them. He flashed forth lightnings and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils." Now David's being poetic here, and he's not saying that the earth actually shook and that there was an actual storm and actual lightning, but he's saying that when he appealed to the Lord and when the Lord responded and destroyed David's enemies, this is the poetic picture he gives of that. And of course, the idea here is that God could tremble the earth, shake the earth. God could ride on the clouds and throw lightning at David's enemies. God could command the wind and throw down hailstones and coals of fire, and he's done that in other Bible stories. But here David uses it poetically to say, this is how powerful God is, and this is what it looks like when God is angry, like a tornado bearing down on you. If you're an enemy of God, you do not want to be in the way of his wrath. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, in Mark chapter 4, we have the story that I'm sure you know well of Jesus and the disciples trying to cross the lake, and a storm comes up, and Jesus is sleeping in the boat without a care in the world, but the disciples are worried. And they should be. The storms, apparently, on the Sea of Galilee could be pretty strong and very sudden. The boats that they were in were not that big. We might think of a large ship, but these fishing boats were not very, very big at all. And so they had some right to be scared. They experienced storms like this before. And so they went and immediately woke Jesus up. In verse 38, he was in the stern asleep on the cushion, and they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Can you imagine being with Jesus in a situation like this? Can you imagine, let's just say tomorrow, a tornado is bearing down on Harrison, Arkansas, and Jesus is here with us, and we come to Jesus and we say, "Jesus, are you going to let us die?" And just imagine him standing in front of that tornado and saying, "Just stop. Just be calm." And it just going away. And that's the picture here. That Jesus has the power to command the storms, to command the wind, to calm the sea, and to save them from what they thought was destruction headed their way. So we see both ends of the spectrum. We see God riding on the clouds, throwing lightning. We see the wrath of God compared to the storm, and we have no doubt that God could bring a storm, bring a tornado, bring whatever he needs in his creation to carry out his will in destroying his enemies. But on the other hand, we have Jesus, who says, not just to the storm, but to his disciples, he says, "Peace, be still." And that's the kind of God that we serve. Whether in times of storms, or whether in good times, or whether we face illness or loss, or whatever heartache might come in this world, the kind of God that we serve is the God who has power over the wind and the waves. It reminds me of that song, "The Master, the tempest is raging. The winds and the waves will obey thy will. Peace, be still." Of course, based on this story. But it's a reminder that God has so much power, that really we don't have anything to worry about. We don't have anything to fear. Even if that tornado hits us tonight, I hope it doesn't, but even if it does, God has the power to rescue us from death, to raise us from the dead. God has the power to make everything right. And that's what he wants to do and is trying to do, and is accomplishing in his son Jesus through his death, through his resurrection, through his son's reign right now as king over the universe. God is accomplishing that very thing, to set right what's gone wrong in our world. And so this evening I invite you, if there's a lot of things going wrong in your world and in your life, Jesus is there to bring peace, to bring calm. Whether it's the peace and calm of knowing that you're forgiven, whether it's the peace and calm of knowing that people are praying for you and God is listening, whether it's the peace and calm of fellowship, of just knowing that God is there. Whatever it is that you need this evening, we invite you to come and let us know how we can help while we stand and sing.